Okay, welcome back. Fight fans, friends in the room. Joining us now, our guy, former world champ, Chris Algieri.
What's up,
What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us, Chris. So much to talk about. We just chopped it up with you recently. But for those that don't know, Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn, canceled due to Conor Benn testing positive for a banned substance. Joining us now is a gentleman that shared the ring with him, also a ring commentator. Chris, one of the things you have content that's already out regarding this topic. One of the things that I'm remembering from our last conversation, we asked you who, I don't know if it was me or Barack, asked you who hits harder, who's the hardest puncher you've ever been. We asked about Conor Benn, and you told us that, I think it was Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao had a little bit more thump in their shot than Conor, but he was strong nevertheless. In hindsight now, retrospect, with all the news that we've all been given about Conor, what was your first reaction once you heard the news?
When it came out, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a reason I heard about it from so many different sources. So I was not surprised.
Wow. All right. So you also said, I heard you say things like you beaten fighters who have cheated before. Can you name some of these fighters that you feel cheated?
No, I mean that's exactly why I never mentioned anything regarding Conor Benn prior to the fight. It's not up to me because of speculation or because of hearsay to call out any fighter for what they're doing, because an allegation is damning. Even to be called out and to say like, oh, potentially he could have been cheating or using PEDs is a very, very rough allegation that
and you don't want to cause that damage speculating, right? But Chris,
I don't know. Right. I can't speak.
I'll ask you this, right? Let's say you have no idea, who took PEDs that shared the ring with you, but if you had to compare the way it is inside the ring with a guy that you feel just has something different, there's an edge there. You share the ring with greats. Is there a difference between, a Provodnikov and an Errol and a Conor? Is there something there that you think you can describe?
There is, and there's not something that I could ever put words to, or I could explain to anyone who's never felt it or been around anyone like that. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand about PEDs, and depending on which PEDs are being used, because we keep throwing in those word PEDs, everyone thinks steroids. Right. Oh, it's steroids, and everyone thinks of steroids as bigger, faster, stronger. That's not how it works in our sport. Testosterone is a very, very specific thing, and as specific as the drug or the hormone is, the way it reacts in your body and what it allows you to do is very not specific. It makes everything better. You're able to recover faster. You're able to sleep better. You're able to be more aggressive. You're able to feel like you're the man. You're stronger. Sure, you recover better. Yeah, you can train harder. Which, listen, the training effect of something. If you're able to train harder, there's no one arbitrary trait that you can add. It's not like, oh, I take drugs and now I can hit hard one punch. It doesn't work like that. The training effect, all those months and weeks and the trainability of what you've been able to do during that training camp shows up on fight night for you to do what you're supposed to do. You're trying to beat your opponent, trying to outwork them, trying to knock them out. Like, it's not just like, oh, I take this drug and now I can knock anybody out. It doesn't work like that. And I think a lot of casual fans kind of look at that. It's like, oh, well, you take drugs, you knock people out. It doesn't really work like that.
You being a nutritionist, what do you know about the drug that kind of tested positive for? Clomid.
Yeah, so clomiphene, which that's the brand name usually that most people know it is Clomid. Clomid in and of itself can boost a man's testosterone. So essentially, it's a female infertility drug. So that's what it's actually used for. It helps with ovulation. It helps a female get pregnant. Obviously that's
well, maybe his wife, was trying to get pregnant, and them having intercourse.
No, absolutely not. It's not. That's not the way it works. Right. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for asking that question, because a lot of people have been saying that out there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, and that's a lot of people like, oh, it's a female fertility drug. How would it help him? Well, the way it reacts in a man's body and a female's body are very different. So it can, in and of itself, on its own, it can raise a man's testosterone. But what most guys use it for, in this sense, when it comes to a PED or a PED or an enhancer, is that when you take exogenous testosterone, meaning you're taking the hormone testosterone from outside of your body. Exogenous means outside of your body. You're inject that into your body, your testosterone levels spike. They go up immediately. So usually to super physiological levels, depending on what kind of dose you're taking. Once you come off that, because you're going to have to come off that, especially if you're going to be tested at some point, your levels will drop. Your body's used to getting it from the outside. And it's like anything. If you don't use it, you lose it. Your body's like, oh, I don't need to make this. We got it here. Boom. Production stops, right? Production stops. You stop taking it. You're not getting it exogenously. You're not creating it anymore. Testosterone drops. Vice versa, your estrogen goes up. So a lot of guys will take this Clomid, which is a SERM, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, meaning it modulates how your body receives the estrogen in your body. So it can either block it or it can spike it. For a male, it's going to block it. And it also is going to raise your testosterone. So it levels you out. So when your testosterone wants to drop, you add this into your system and it brings your testosterone up. It modulates, meaning it affects your estrogen, so it's not going too high or too low, and it keeps it level. So a lot of times it becomes an off-cycle drug, which is how a lot of athletes will use that in order to level out their levels, be able to take their test and pass.
Right, but Chris, is there room for, because I know a lot of people said it, and I know you've even said it with Dan Canobio, like every fighter should know exactly what he's putting in his body. But we know that's not reality. We know that's not reality. Most fighters, probably just about all fighters, they take whatever their nutritionist, if they even can afford one, or their strength and conditioning coach is giving them, so they don't really know what they're putting in their body. So I'm asking you, is there any room for maybe it's somebody else's mistake and not the fighters?
No. Zero.
Why do you say that?
Because at the end of the day, you're the man stepping in the ring. It's up to you.
But Chris, fighters.
I don't disagree with you.
Checking what's going on. You know that.
I don't disagree with you.
Especially if you're being told, hey, this is...
No, so I'm saying, so where do we hold those guys? Because look, Sugar Shane Mosley, like Andre Berto, Antonio Tarver, Luis Ortiz, like so many people have failed drug tests. Where is that thin line that maybe it really, really wasn't them?
So listen, I agree with you because I know a lot of fighters personally, and they know they don't know what they're taking, and they have to build a team around them that's going to be that they need to trust, right? But this is not.
Can I just say one thing? If Danny Jacobs would have popped, he would have been looking at you like, Chris, what are you feeding me?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, guess what? He's missing out on the money, not me. Listen, I'm not going to get paid what I was going to get paid, but he's really not going to get paid what he was going to pay. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. It was at the end of the day, it's him going in there. He's the contestant. He's the competitor. So any mistake that was made by his team is made by him. So you have to trust who's around you. That's just the way it works. If your lawyer can't get you off, the lawyer goes home that night. You go to jail.
No, you're right about that. But Chris, if I wanted to use an analogy, to your point, if it's somebody else, if you're going out to commit a crime with somebody, but it wasn't you, but your friend did it, but you didn't know he was doing it, should you be guilty of it? You know what I mean? It's like, I feel what Barack is saying, because I'm thinking that at some point during this sport, there are fighters that probably didn't know what they were taking, genuinely just accepting what their conditioning coach, what their trainer in some cases is giving them, and just having that narrow vision, just training for the fight, preparing for this fight. I'm trusting my team, right? I'm trusting my team.
There had to be at least one case.
There had to be. But I'm saying, should that fighter be punished the same? And I'm not saying that Conor's, not guilty. I don't know. I mean, there's still an investigation going on. He still hasn't been suspended. We don't know what's going to come of this. But there has to be a line, like Barack is saying, where if a fighter genuinely, it's proven.
I'm not trying to give him an out. I'm not trying to give Conor out. What I'm saying is that we all jumped the gun so fast without no investigation. I don't know about you, Chris. Have you ever been arrested and you ain't do nothing? You know what I'm saying? Have you ever been arrested and you're like, well, I need my day in court because that was not me. You know what I'm saying? I've been there. So you need a chance to defend yourself. And that's what I think, like, when things like this happen, it tarnishes your career forever. Even Canelo exonerated himself with a hair follicle, and people still talk about it. So I'm just saying, let's just give time to everything, because a case like that can be that maybe your strength and conditioning coach been doing it already with other fighters, been getting away. He knows that you're clean and you're not going to go for it. So he's doing it without you knowing, cycling you off, doing all of this crap, and you don't know.
And hold on, Barack, just to add one more thing, Chris, and I'm sorry, I'm going to let you elaborate on this. But when you think about it, right? When you think about the job of a strength and conditioning coach, I mean, his objective is to make this guy into a machine naturally, right? As best as he can, so he can go out and perform. If that trainer can get an edge where fighters feel amazing with him without them knowing, and he can continue to, to get jobs at all of these fighters, there's room for that. I can see motive there for a guy that's handling your diet and strength and conditioning. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying I'm being objective here, Chris.
Yeah, first and foremost, definitely no motive there, because once you get caught, you're just like, Barack said, like you're blackballed now. So
Right,
that guy is blackballed. Like you have a big risk. Not only is your client gonna be gonna get caught out there, and you're not gonna get the fight, you're not gonna get paid. That guy is now known as a cheat. As a coach.
So you're doing a lot of damage, yeah.
You're doing a lot of damage, and it's not just you, it's not just the fighter, it's also yourself and also your career. Listen, that fighter, that coach that you said who wants to get that advantage and wants to get those jobs, he doesn't want to get called out as being a cheater. He doesn't want to be the guy that didn't make that fight happen. He doesn't want to be the guy who forced that fight not to get happen. At the end of the day, the fighter doesn't fight, nobody gets paid. Right. So listen, why are you taking that risk? Yeah, you want your guy to do well, but if you don't get to the fight, it doesn't matter. It's like making weight. If you don't make weight first, the fight doesn't happen. You have to make weight first. You got to pass the drug test so the fight can happen, so everyone can get paid. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't help anybody. Also,
is there any room for? Go ahead. Sorry.
So this drug in particular, this is not a contamination drug. This is not like, I bought a supplement over at GNC and it was contaminated with some testosterone and that's what I got caught with. No, it's literally a female infertility drug. You're not going to find that touched into something that you took. You took this for a very specific reason. And that's also why this is really not something that you can argue in terms of being like, he didn't know or it could have been a mistake.
So in other words, in your opinion, there's really no room for Conor to really exonerate himself from this.
No, he can obviously come back and say, listen, I made a mistake. My team let me down. I didn't know. Maybe he didn't know. And then he goes on to say that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The fight's still off. The fight was supposed to be a couple days ago. The fight didn't happen. So
right. But obviously that's done. But there's a difference if he can prove that it was unknowing. To my understanding, I mean, if he can't, he can be possibly banned for 4 years. Yeah. If he can prove that it's something that was unintentional or there's some other details in that verbiage, then it would be more of a 6-month suspension and then moving on to the next.
Well, I'm sure they're building a case for that right now and going with that. That's not for me to say or not. If that's up to the governing bodies to decide where they're going to go and what the ruling is going to be. But at the end of the day, and I've said this before in other situations, these drugs don't go away when the effect doesn't go away when you stop taking them. Androgens are different. They build tissue. Tissue. They create a physiology that's not natural, super physiological. I used that word earlier. So you're creating tissue. You're building. You're making things that don't go away. So that's why there is arguments for long-term bans where people are using certain PEDs, certain performance-enhancing drugs, because this is not like a stimulant. It's not like, when I stop taking a stimulant, next week I'm the same person I was before. It's not like that with androgens. They're literally tissue building. So it makes physiological difference. It increases the mitochondria in your muscle cells. It changes things that don't go back. So that's where the argument comes for these longer term bans. But this is going to come down to whatever governing body decides on whatever ruling there is and what evidence is produced. This is long from over.
Yeah, and just to make things clear, myself and I know Barack shared this sentiment. Like we We don't approve of any type of enhancement drugs for such a sport that's this brutal and deadly at times, where fighters risk their lives every time in a ring. There's no room for it at all. There's no exception to the rule. What we're trying to point out is just to give you a different angle in where we feel like in some cases a fighter might not know, and that might be Conor's only
right. I'm just saying, give it a little bit more time.
Right, and this fight,
condemn him. You know, that's all I'm saying. But I think actually punishment should be stricter, because we need some kind of deterrent, because, you know, this is happening a lot in the sport. So if guys would lose their licenses indefinitely, you know, maybe this would get cut down.
Oh, it'll probably be, there'll be a drastic change in that. But this fight is a big fight. It's one of the biggest fights in British history, right? A lot of history attached to that fight with their fathers. This is a fight that they're not walking away from. Both fighters still want to fight each other. The network, DAZN, still wants to fight. Matchroom, the promoter, still wants to make this fight happen. So down the line, after this investigation is done and the governing body decides what they want to do with Conor, down the line, we're going to have to promote this fight again.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We spoke last week. I was excited about this fight.
Right.
I wanted this fight to happen. Yes. I was very excited about this fight. I actually predicted Conor to win, you know, to produce the upset. Like I was looking forward to this fight, and a lot of my people and my peers were looking to it as well. I'm an old school boxing head, man. This is cool. We got the sons of legends who fought fighting each other. I mean, it's there's nothing better. So for me, you know, this was one of those situations where, yeah, this is a huge fight, just like you said. But like, you know, now things are different. This.
Chris, you're no judge. You're no judge, right? But please give me your source of the action that you would take for something like this. If you had some control, if you had some power, what would be the punishment? What would you say to Conor, Benn? If you had, you know, if you can have some shots to call here.
So I can't do that until I hear just like Barack said, in terms of, we got to give this guy due diligence. We got to see what's going to be produced. I want to hear everything that's going to live. He needs a case. It's not, you know, we got to hear it all. Right. You know, right now the fight's off. Right now he's getting trashed through the media. It is what it is. But listen, that's the nature of the game. Right. But we need to hear from their side, and they have been very silent so far in terms of any kind of
I mean, the only thing that they've said, his father put out a video saying my son is clean. He also said before the fight was canceled, he said he's a clean fighter once once the drug test first came out. So to your point, you're right. A lot has not been said, very little. There has to be more said to state your case.
Yeah, no, and what I said about in terms of the drugs and themselves, like that's something that you got to look at afterwards. Like, all right, well, he pleaded his case. He's got this information. We're getting these details. And then it's up to the governing bodies, whoever they are, to look at all that and then decide based on the evidence provided and with the facts and the objective data related to the specific drug being used and how it's going to affect him moving forward, where we go from there.
Okay. So here's the $1 million question before you go, Chris. Because you fought him before, you fought him 10 months ago. Whenever this happens to a fighter, it always tarnishes all of their wins beforehand. So maybe moving forward, he can prove that he's clean, just like all of these other fighters has a chance to prove themselves clean and continue to fight, and even some become champions, you know. So now that you know that this has happened, you look back and say, there's a possibility maybe he was dirty when I was fighting. Would you want a rematch?
So there's never not going to be a question. We'll never have the answer. And people have been asking, like, oh, do you think he was on drugs when you fought him? I'm like, I don't know. And I'll never know. Right. But there will always be a question. And that is the absolute truth. You know, I will never know. I can never say that he was or he wasn't. The only time we're ever going to know, well, up until now, is this fight, because there's objective data saying that he failed to test. So we weren't VADA tested when we fought. But I still cannot go out there and say, oh yeah, I think he was, he probably was. That doesn't matter. That's me.
Has that crossed your mind to say, you know what, I'd like to fight him again, knowing that maybe being VADA tested, I'd like to fight him again?
Hey, listen, I actually spoke to him via DM after the fight. And I said, hey man, I wish you the best. You know, it didn't go my way, but you know, like, listen, I'll root for you unless I'm across the ring from you again. And now, you know, that's the only way I can look at it. You know, I've never I didn't get a bad feeling from the man at all when I met with him, just like majority of the fighters that I've ever fought. You know, I respect everyone who steps through those ropes, because what we do is extremely dangerous, and it's the best sport in the world. But at the end of the day, I mean, listen, I'm a clean fighter. I've always been a clean fighter, and I think that I've always believed in myself and my abilities. I've never needed to go outside of that. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this was shocking news to us. We like kind of very much here. Great.
This totally surprised me. If I had to guess who would not use, it would be somebody like him. This really surprised me.
It was a shock.
Yeah, I mean, I say that I was not surprised, and it's not because of him by any means. Like I said, I spoke to him prior to the fight. It wasn't because of him.
It's because
it was just what I heard.
Right.
So a lot of people are throwing what I said out and being, oh, he knew it. He said that. No. It's because of things I heard. It has nothing to do with the man himself. I told him and his father. I respect his father tremendously. I respect him. And I said all that prior to the fight and after the fight. It's just, but I had heard things before, during, and after.
All right.
So.
Last thing, Chris, before you go, does this fight happen eventually? Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel for Conor Benn?
I've said that before. I do think it does. I think this is boxing. Unfortunate as that is, I think that a lot of this stuff, we've seen many fighters pop before, and there's a lot of fighters who have popped that we've never seen, and that's a very sad and difficult thing to understand and to accept, but it's part of what this sport unfortunately holds. But ultimately, if I was going to bet on it, I would say this fight does happen at some point.
All right, well, Chris, as always, we appreciate your candid and honest opinions, and we'll talk soon, champ.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.